For those of you who can't see the text, what the cartoon says is, I don't believe in ethics anymore. As far as I'm concerned, the ends justify the means. Get what you can while the getting's good. That's what I say. Might makes right. The winners write the history books. It's a dog-eat-dog world. So I'll do whatever I have to and let others argue about whether it's right or wrong. Hobbes pushes him in the mud puddle. Hey, why'd you do that? You were in my way. Now you're not. The ends justify the means. As Calvin cleans himself off. I didn't mean for everyone, you dolt. Just me. Ah, says Hobbes. Hi, I'm Heather Church with the Faculty of Health Sciences. I'm sorry I couldn't be here with you today. I'm off collecting data for my PhD dissertation. My great idea for teaching is titled Building Legislation and Ethics Search, Review, and Application Skills. This course was initially designed for EDUC 9463, which is an ethics and jurisprudence course with the Master of Professional Education in the Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA stream, in the Faculty of Education. It could be used in any program with an ethics or jurisprudence components. It can also be modified to suit the second year ethics course, Introduction to Ethics, with the Health Sciences faculty, and it's suited for both in-class and online instruction. Of course, with the online instruction, because there is a group component, there are some logistics that do have to be sorted out. The rationale for this course is that ethics courses are often very boring. Students often just see them as a requirement to memorize the different rules and regulations of a profession without ever actually considering what the rationale is behind those rules. So this exercise promotes critical analysis of the standards of practice as they relate to legislation, and it helps to develop autonomous decision-making skills. And it's crucial for those in clinician training programs to do this, because they will find themselves in situations where they have to decide what their ethical standards are and what their actions are going to be based on their ethical standards and based on the legislation. So the goals for this course include teaching students how to locate the relevant resources to inform their decision making, how to apply legislation and court rulings that are already in existence to hypothetical scenarios, so that they have an idea of how they can interpret court rulings in their own practice once they're in the field. And then to determine whether or not a scenario may represent a violation of ethical standards or practice and or relevant legislation. And then based on that, decide how to proceed in light of A and B for their own clinical decision making. So for goal 1, locating the relevant resources, the students will learn to use web search tools to locate the profession's governing body and related resources, government and ministry websites, various legal information institutes such as canley.org, where you can access policies, legislation, and you can access them at the federal, provincial, and local levels. And those also offer how different court rulings and different tribunals have interpreted the legislation and ethical standards of practice in individual cases. And you can also look at international legal websites such as the Legal Information Institute at www.law.cornell.edu, which covers American law. Or if you're interested in Asian law, you could look at the Asian Legal Information Institute at www.asianlii.org to locate relevant laws for those areas. And what I've found in the past in teaching this course is that that's actually really useful. It's an online course, so we have people coming from all over the province and some people even from outside the province taking the course. And so giving them something that's relevant to them so they can seek out their legislation in their own region makes the course more meaningful to them. So the initial lesson development is just a 20-minute sort of brainstorming session. You present the rationale for the exercise that they're going to be engaging in. And then you brainstorm a list of resources which can be located. You review the relevant ethical standards of practice. Walk them through how to locate the court rulings. When I do it using canley.org, because our students for this course tend to be Canadian, so then I can show them how to access federal and provincial legislation as it pertains to education or the health sectors. And then we discuss other suitable resources such as provincial health legislation like the Health Act, standards of practice with their profession, local standards of practice with their local professional governing bodies, ministry guidelines, and court rulings, and so on. To close up that lesson, I usually like to sort of do a wrap-up or synopsis of what we've covered, and this covers about 5 minutes. So we reinforce the importance of selecting, referencing, and citing standards of practice, policy, and legislation. I'd also just sort of reiterate strategies for interpreting how legislation and standards of practice are enforced in tricky situations, and then how rulings can be used relating to other professions if there's no precedent for one's own profession. And that's often the case in my field in ABA, simply because it's a relatively new profession to Canada. It's been around for a good long time, but it's really only started to be recognized in the last sort of 3 decades in Canada. So being able to use the rulings relating to other professions when no examples exist in our own profession is important, because then we can understand the spirit of the law and how judges and courts sort of interpret those laws to help inform our own decision making. So then in the next lecture, I like to follow this up and really reinforce this. And this can be a graded activity, or it can just be something that you do for practice. If it is for a graded activity, I would suggest doing it a few days or a few classes after you've presented that introduction to the session. What you might also do is have that first 20-minute teaching session with the closure, take a break, and then when you reconvene after the break, then work on what I'm about to present to you as sort of a practice trial run. And then, a few classes later on, make the assignment, a similar assignment, make that due then. So the second goal here is how to search and apply legislation and court rulings. So this is more of an applied lesson. And so the steps here involved include you introduce the activity and the digital resources that are going to be used, and you only spend about 5 to 10 minutes on it because you've already taught them where they can look for the different relevant resources. And you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. You're looking at least undergraduate level students, but presumably most of these will be in clinical training professions. So those are usually graduate level courses. So chances are pretty good they've already got some pretty good search skills. So then what you do is you provide a scenario to groups of 3 or 4 students, and 3 groups get the same hypothetical scenario. And so you're taking a scenario that has possibly an ethical violation, possibly a violation of the law, but maybe not. And it's a good idea to have a few examples. So in some instances, maybe there isn't a violation, whereas other groups will have a violation. And so the idea there is just to get them used to arguing for and against whether or not there is a violation. And so each group must argue the case from either the perspective of the complainant, the defendant, or the adjudicating body. And so that's why you really want to look at those cases from legal institutes such as the Canadian Legal Information Institute at canley.org. So then in groups of 3 or 4, the students will break out and discuss how they're going to approach this. They'll seek legislation, standards of practice, and pertinent cases and policies to argue their case. Then they present it to the class, sort of courtroom style, and the complainant and defendant get a chance to present their cases to the group responsible for adjudicating the cases, citing relevant policies and legislation, ethical standards of practice, and then the adjudicating group use all those resources and use what was presented to them, as well as their own resources, to arrive at a conclusion or decision regarding the case. Thereafter, you break out into groups, have a discussion about whether the rest of the class agrees or disagrees, and what issues came up that you really want to highlight. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope this can come in handy to you. Take care now.